Our third speaker has a tall task here. Lisa Liang has the eminent skills to do this. Lisa is our commentator. She is a commercial projects manager at Infrastructure Ontario. Lisa oversees the Broadband One Window platform and leads digital twin initiatives across various asset classes. She'll provide an overview of digital twin pilots by Infrastructure Ontario and reflect on the insights from our panelists and highlight the importance of mentoring the next generation of talent. Lisa?
Jonathan. So I'll kind of start off with just a brief background in terms of IO's initiative. So earlier this year, the Ontario government had announced a commitment to really exploring the use of digital twins technology. And this is really through the development of 3 proof of concepts for specific sites. So it's really in the case of Eglinton Crosstown West Extension, Ontario Place as a tourist site, as well as in the context of a hospital, Peter Gilligan Mississauga Hospital. Just to kind of recap a foundational kind of basis for those on the call, a digital twin is essentially a virtual representation of a real world asset, can be a process, a system, essentially a network as well. And they're really used in various kind of sectors. So we've seen this in manufacturing, healthcare, for smart cities, aerospace, and obviously in IO's kind of case, exploring the role that digital twins can play really in the infrastructure context. And this can really be such as enhancing decision-making, bringing greater transparency to large capital projects, really across the asset lifecycle. And again, that could really be through the construction phase, design and planning, or even really at the operations and maintenance phase down the line as well. We've heard some great complex stories and real life examples really thus far from Drago, Arash, and Matt's presentations, and really about how technology plays a role in several built environment initiatives. Really touching on that, all parties really touched on the significant cross sections of how having good digitized data and access to that information really enables better decision making. And that's kind of an key element and theme that I've taken from all the presenters here today. In an example of that, and when we think about it in kind of relation to our physical world around us, we can kind of think about like a recent flooding experience that we saw earlier this year in Toronto with a lot of the rain coming down. A digital twin really has an array of capabilities, and one of them can be simulation. So when we look at it as kind of like an analogy, so if you were to kind of say like looking at digitizing yourself, you could really look at replicating essentially your skeleton as kind of one data layer, as well as looking at how your circulatory and endocrine system kind of operate within each other. From there, you can really look at examining how the body interacts in the space around it, what impacts external factors may have on the body, as well as the systems and how they interact with each other. And by kind of having that visual, you're able to really enable better ability to diagnose as well as assess future risks in really a more holistic manner. And when you kind of think about that analogy and some of the great takeaways that our presenters have said today, and kind of look at it as thinking about like the art of the possible with the role technology plays, such as digital twins, you can really think about it in the context of different themes, whether that's across ESG construction or different kind of factors there. The key is really that, digital twins can play in predicting climate and weather, and it can really be used through historical and current data collection to really help reduce disruptions to Ontarians, right? And across the globe as well, I would say, to really ensure that we're better prepared, we're better supported in our built environment and our built infrastructure to really enable Ontarians to continue on with their lives. There's one more kind of item that I wanted to touch upon, and this is really, something that Matt has said. As we all kind of know, the tech boom really continues to evolve as time has continued to go on, and we've seen that, through AI and through different kind of factors there in rising technologies. And while there are countless opportunities really in the role that technology can play in the environment, it's only as relevant as who use it and operate it, right? And we've heard this from Matt, and he really said it best, that the significant need for those entering the workforce to learn cutting edge technologies in order to operate that down the line is really a key aspect here in fueling that growth in the use of technology. Essentially, like without key skilled users of the technology and tools, there are no realized benefits and there are no realized gains. So that's why it's really so important. And I just want to highlight that fact from Matt, because it is important to ensure that we're building the next generation of skilled workers as we kind of evolve through our tech journeys and as our strategies and implementations change. There is a crucial need to ensure that there is proper change management that is intertwined with the growth of technology and its tools, rather than just focusing on the technologies and the evolution in themselves. It's really interconnected, and without technology, we wouldn't be able to do things as efficiently, but also the vice versa is true. Without the people and the skilled workers to kind of fuel that and utilize that technology and extract that value in the real world context, there's really no ability to really benefit or find those realized benefits and gains. And that's why they're both really interconnected. So I'll kind of just pause there and give it back to you, Jonathan. But those are some comments that I picked up and some themes across the different presenters.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm just going to put a call out there for experts to help out some of the youth talent that we're going to showcase through the City of Mississauga's and Go Open Data's Hackathon Challenge coming up on November the 26th. And I'll put a link into the chat when I find it. Also, Lisa, if you could just briefly talk about your volunteer and how you're supporting the next generation talent through that volunteer work.
Sure. Thanks, Jonathan. So as part of kind of my role in, the environment and within being a steward of the community, I sit on a board of directors for the Women's Nonprofit Network. Really, there is a large gap in terms of, women being empowered to essentially enable a lot of the good work that's being done in communities and organizations. And that's really across multitude of different sectors, whether that's technology, construction, built environment, healthcare, you name it, right? A lot of that important work from nonprofits really touches upon essentially all elements in all sectors. There is, unfortunately, a large gap in terms of the resources and tools that enable women in order to kind of progress and help build the next generation of workers, as well as progress as leaders themselves within the workforce. 80% of the nonprofit sector is really made up of women, right? And so as part of kind of my work and with the Women's Nonprofit Network, we're really enabling, better resourcing, better tools, and better enablement of empowerment to really support the next generation of leaders. And this is, anywhere from those that are youth from like ages of 10 all the way upward to executive level, like directors that we've seen across the nonprofit sector that are well into their careers. We're still noticing that there's themes of the lack of training and change management and ability to grow there. So as part of kind of my work with WNN, we're really looking at, being a voice for a lot of the women leaders across there and really helping enforce a lot of the resources and skills that can enable them to better kind of grow there. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you. So hopefully we'll get some of those experts to mentor some of the younger students coming up through the high school system, but also the post-secondary, both the undergrad and the grad students. Yes, the first question, Darko, if you could answer it, it's addressed to you. It's around the interoperability of the different digital assets that are brought into infrastructure projects.
Yes, I guess this pertains to the second question in the chat that was specifically asking for water main leak detection. But one of the issues that was identified there is compatibility between sensor network requirements. So we have both private and public networks. Private networks are, your Rogers, Thales, Bell, there are a number of private network providers that have their own hardware and or protocols for communicating and using that network. On the other hand, we have the public networks that we have explored, and my thought was that if we are to deploy a large number of devices in infrastructure that is relatively low cost, it would be hugely advantageous to minimize those communication costs while keeping them, standardized with the technology that actually, has some longevity. And this is where LoRaWAN kind of struck me as one of the technologies where, a number of industry organizations and manufacturers have basically signed on to this technology. So the whole ecosystem was very rapidly developing. So I thought this would be a good candidate for green infrastructure monitoring. Now, being a public network means that there are no guarantees on 100% data capture and conveyance. And this is something that municipalities and other organizations, that's the challenge that they're facing, is that you need, as an organization, to sign a contract with a provider that guarantees a certain level of performance. And with public networks, that's not the case, because you're not basically signing any kind of an agreement. It's a public network that's out there and capable of collecting signals, but probably not 100% of the time. So for crucial pieces of infrastructure where the data continuity is really important, right, in making quick decisions, this is probably not the way to go. And you basically have to deal with figuring out which private network and provider to go with. For green infrastructure, where, as I said earlier, our primary goals are to understand how it operates and give us some indication on its condition and over longer periods of time. Not having 100% of the data communicated is not that important. So these are kind of some thoughts that I have on that. But it is a rapidly developing space, and there are new technologies constantly coming up. And what I've seen recently is that there are integrators. So I think one of these is called Matter, where that basically ingests data from various protocols and standards, and it's kind of trying to standardize these so that to deal with precisely this issue, is that if you have sensor A and it's connected to provider 1, and sensor B that's provided that's connected to provider 2, how do you actually integrate this? And I think this is still developing.
Right. And there's another follow-up question. How do we get access to the Smart Blue Roof data? You said at a cost of $8 per year.
Well, the cost of $8 is on this public network called Helium, and they've kind of changed their model only in this year. But that's the cost of actually getting the data into the cloud, right, and into their server, from where you can forward it to anywhere that you want this data to be. So we were using various kind of visualization tools and storage, because storage of this data with these providers does come at an added cost, but you can just forward it to, the simplest thing we were doing is just sending this data. Once it's received, we forward it to Google Sheet. So we have a Google Sheet that's that's storing all this data in the cloud.
Great. Thank you. And Matt, I have a question for you. Who owns the data? You, your client? How do we make this available as open data?
This particular data sets is client owned, but I mentioned we did a demo of the X7 recently in Coburg, and I can make a data set like that available if people would like to spin around and have a look at it. But most of our data that we collect is client owned once we collect it.
That's great. We can share your data, point cloud data, with the teacher that teaches CAD at the local high school. And he's also an AutoCAD trainer for teachers. So that'll be useful to do that. And also, I just wanted to share my screen, and I put the link into my contact, but also to the upcoming hackathon with the City of Mississauga. So here you see the sky's the limit, Student Sustainability Hackathon. And we're hoping to get senior secondary students who can benefit from not only their peers and experts like yourselves, but also students who are in post-secondary, both undergrad and graduates, And then also I've been mentoring a student who is a graduate, but also hoping to immigrate to Canada. And he has a degree in engineering from Nepal. He's also graduated from the final class of the post-secondary GIS environmental program at Fleming. And he's now doing data analytics at Durham College. So we've hired him to work on our ArcGIS Online instance for Sustainable Coburg for monitoring our trees. But you can see that the challenge here is leveraging rooftops to address climate change. That's something that's very important considering Mississauga or the GTA have seen 4 100-year storms since 2013. And the thing is that these storms don't blanket the whole municipality. So it's important to have locational intelligence, not only with the current data being collected by the Internet of Things, but also historical data so that you can design, bid, and build those resilient infrastructure projects. So I see that we've got a few more minutes, and if anybody wants to unmute to pose a question, please let us know. Seeing none, if please thank.
Jonathan, can I just add to what you just said? Is
Yeah,
the two events that struck Mississauga this summer were completely contained within the smart blue roof. So there was zero runoff from these events from the roofs. And what we're doing is kind of a study to see, you know, what effect that would have on a neighborhood level if all the roofs were controllable. So
so Darko, I hope you have a team that is entering the contest.
I hope so.
Your students. Because even if they're graduate students, I know it's not fair. We will make it fair for the graduate versus the secondary student. But it is important for them to understand what's happening, not just in academia, but also out in the field with applications like Matt showcased to the students here. It's hard for them to see that because in their shops, they don't have access to this smart technology. It's just too expensive. So the whole idea of turning that rooftop into a living lab is sort of the vision of using open data to turn the community into a living lab. And I know here at Venture 13, and I want to thank them for hosting me as a moderator in their facility, we have 920 square feet that used to be a makerspace, and there's an expression of interest out, and we're hoping to turn that into something that will include just a small manufacturing lab, but also a simulation where we can begin to use this data from collected in our community to train future tradespeople, because we know that there aren't enough tradespeople that are trained to use this technology in the field to build, maintain, operate, and maintain it. So that's one of the key things that we're going to try and do in our hackathon in 2025, our May Good Hack 25, and we'll follow this up with another seminar in February that builds on the subsurface infrastructure. And I'm hoping to get the City of Toronto Water Department to talk about what they're doing with their digital twin pilot. And if I don't see any other questions, Yuri, do you want to make some final comments?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. This has been very, very interesting. One of the questions that I have to the community at large, I've been around digital data since 1975. And one of the things that I'm still hearing is the challenge around standards. So if we look at all of the different technologies that are collecting data, quite often in the past anyways, we have found that the data standard is the one that's imposed by the vendor of the software hardware systems that we're using. So the question is, when we're looking at a lot of different technologies these days, the issue of integration of data and interoperability among systems, I suspect is still a pretty big challenge, but I'd be interested in hearing from the speakers any thoughts around the need to standardize the standards.
I'm happy to jump in here, and Matt, feel free to add anything from your perspective. I think from kind of the perspective that I have being at Infrastructure Ontario, and the government's commitment to exploring the use of digital twins in just kind of our large capital infrastructure projects. What we are hearing as well is similar kind of roadblocks and gaps in terms of access to data, but not just access to any data, good data. And good data comes with having, standardized, data sharing and standards across. And there are so many different, realms of standards out there. So from our perspective, that's something that we're exploring right now in some conversations across the 3 POC sites as well with different, delivery partners and groups and organizations. It's really trying to understand, what type of standards are being utilized and where does, the standardization of data come to play in terms of how it's connected to the technology, and where is kind of intervention required there, whether that's working with different partners that are helping build the infrastructure across Ontario, but also looking at where is the role for government to kind of play, right, in terms of enabling that type of environment where we can progress and move towards access to better and good data based off of certain standards that can be applicable to different sectors.
One of the challenges that we've kind of been facing on the whole this standardization side is in other jurisdictions, when you look at Europe or even East Asian countries, there is the role that the federal government plays in adopting standards and enforcing standards. That role in Canada, we have different levels of government, and there hasn't really been a national mandate to adopt any particular standard one way or another. So that's a challenge that our industry is facing. My personal opinion is that the best way to protect the investments everybody is making today is to adopt international standards, right? Because when it comes to technology and how this data is going to be used in future, there's a lot of good work that's being done around the world, and a lot of those innovation or innovative tools have a challenge getting into the Canadian space because, again, we're not adopting international standards. So I think my view on the topic is that when it comes to digital twins, there's no digital twin standard, but there are BIM standards and there are GIS standards. So if we can kind of work towards adopting and building our infrastructure based on those open data standards, I think that's the best way to protect the future of digital twin applications, whatever they may be. So that's just my personal opinion of.
Yeah, it's great. And we're right down to the wire here, but there is one last question in the chat for Darko. Jamie's interested in sensor recommendations for weather, low RA-WAN sensors with precipitation monitoring.
I have interest in that because there are several solutions that are available out there. We just put one in the CBC building. There's a City of Mississauga official rain gauge at the building next door. So we purchased a LoRaWAN weather station that's, I believe it was $300 and it measures 8 parameters, including precipitation intensity. So we're just, we haven't compared the data, but that's what I was interested in, is to see how this at least precipitation monitoring from this low-cost station with wireless transmission capabilities, how does it compare against the City of Mississauga rain gauge? So stay tuned. I will have some more information once we process this data, but these have been operating in parallel through these July and August large intensity storms. So we have, I think, at least a summer of monitoring, and they're just coming down this week.
Great. And I'm assuming Kyle will post that on the sustainable evaluation, sustainable
Technologies.
technology evaluation program wiki. That'd be great for Jamie. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks to the presenters. This has been an excellent round of expert information. Lisa, thanks you for your insightful comments and reflections on the presentations. And we look forward to the next webinar in February. Enjoy the rest of the day. I can't imagine anything being more exciting today than our webinar. Yuri?
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. Just a quick note that we have a recording of this session, and we'll be sending it out to those who registered, together with information regarding the hackathons. So thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Thanks, John.